Welcome, fellow synthesizer sickos. I'm Vulture Culture, and tonight we're going to be checking out the indomitable Prophet 12. This synthesizer has been on my bucket list of synths that I have been hunting for, and this is such an exciting opportunity to have one of these in the studio right now and to explore them. So tonight we're going to be checking out all the presets, or as many as I can possibly play in tonight's live stream, answering any questions, and also going into a little synthesis. One of the great things about a synthesizer like this is that you've got all of the hands-on control right here. I'm so used to my vintage synths behind me that actually having all of this in front of me, I feel very spoiled by it. Yeah, it just sounds incredible. So let's jump into the first bank. That was the first sound. It's a Prophet. Let's hear some strings. Really beautiful. And yeah, so immediately just gorgeous sounds coming out of this synthesizer, rubbery clav. You can hear, hopefully you're listening in stereo, that's jumping around the stereo spectrum. How's it going, Chris and Sonic? I would love to be able to import wavetables. At some point, though, it just gets crazy, right? And becomes a Hydra synth. This one, Gossamer Touch, is really beautiful. Hear that great delay. We have 4 delay lines here, which is wild. Honestly, sounds more like strings to me than... Just gorgeous. This one's really cool. Whirly Trem Mod Wheel. So we have this sort of sound. And if I increase the mod wheel, we get this great vibrato. Or tremolo, really, right? Just beautiful. Dubstation rightly points out that many synthesizers fail the Starscream test when they lose focus because they can do too much. And this synthesizer immediately stands out as maybe the most fully featured sequential or Dave Smith's instrument synthesizer ever, in terms of, I can't think of a synth that they've put out that does more. You could argue, depending on how you feel about digital oscillators, maybe you would personally prefer a synth that's entirely analog, although the filter is analog. We also have a high-pass filter with resonance that's analog that can be modulated by one of the auxiliary envelopes. So, but we've got feedback. We have all sorts of crazy stuff in here. But I think it does stand up as probably being the most deep of the Prophets anyways. This bass sound is so good. So good. that's so much thwack. And if we increase the resonance, get more into that territory. Yeah, just beautiful. Falling Angels. Definitely feels newer, like Chris is saying. Yes, this came out in 2013, and it had a long run for sure. I think it was manufactured for at least a decade. Very cool synth. Oh, this one, Zap, is interesting up in this higher range. I wonder if it's a Filter FM, you know, sort of like almost like a dubsteppy type thing. Analog drums and hats, Iron Skin. Really emphasizing we've got distortion up here as well as decimation, drive, and hack, which is basically reducing the sample depth. So another thing about this synthesizer is I think compared to any of the rest of the Prophet type synths, so much more goes into the distortion here, with maybe the exception of the Polyevolver. Great one that emphasizes, by the way, can I get a scum cheers in the chat? Thank you guys for hanging out tonight. I do a live stream like this every Wednesday night at 9, so if you're new here, welcome to the channel. Please subscribe, hit that fucking bell to help me out with the goddamn algorithm, and cheers, guys. That's right, Parbs. It does have Curtis filter chips. I have to say they have a certain kind of character. I wouldn't necessarily say they sound like any of my vintage Curtis-based synths. Definitely something there. So the 4-pole mode of the filter is fully self-oscillating, and then we also have a 2-pole mode which is not. So here's the difference. Yes, and that's correct. So you can always see which voice you're using at any moment by looking at those dots there. Actually, the Matrix 12 has a similar feature. Prophet 106. Now, yeah, so if you look here, I'm using 2 voices at once. And yes, I did notice that too, that the gain staging is important with this because there's just a lot of opportunities to drive this thing in. And I was reading Madeira's review of this. Madeira's an awesome YouTuber if you guys haven't subscribed to their channel. And they were talking about the way that this synth has a darker sound coming from the oscillators than, say, the Polyevolver's digital section, because that synth has more aliasing in it. This synthesizer, not so much, but also a little bit more of a dark sound, which I think is interesting. And because of that, D to A can be overdriven a bit. Probably my favorite organ sound I've ever heard. Hot and dusty. Yeah, so we have 4 delay lines, which is wild to me. If I'm correct, there's no one of the craziest things, there's no reverb. You know, a lot of these sounds have a reverby type sound. You might be forgiven for thinking, oh, I like the reverb on that patch, but there isn't one. It's just delay. I haven't tried to configure it as a chorus, but there's also not like an analog chorus or a dedicated one anyways. I don't know if you can take the delay into that range. So it is pretty crazy how this synth can kind of sound virtual analog. And then you have something like that just really emphasizes, wow, the incredible amount of gain that you can get from the distortion. So man, yeah, that is pretty insane. Hey, how's it going, John? I never considered the P12. Still think the Polyevolver is his best synth. Just so unique. Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of an argument between those, the original Prophet 5 and the Prophet VS, right? Really incredible. Yeah, it's got that natural roomy sound. Yeah, it's pretty wild. Here's the actual quote asking Dave Smith, it was in an interview, asking a parent their favorite child we know, but what is the synth that you've thought, that was so good, I'm proud of that one? And his response was, the Prophet VS is kind of cool, but in some ways it's a one-trick pony sound palette-wise. The Prophet T8 is awesome, but from this round, the Prophet 12 is still one of my favorites. I just think there's something magical about it. It's different than anything else. This would have been around COVID. And then he said, in the Evolver, I mean, I almost wish the Polyevolver keyboard was done a little differently, a little better, but I was still learning how to design stuff back then. And then the interviewer asked, what would you change about the Evolver? And he said, just thinking about how it was put together. It's a little unfair somewhat because I'm thinking about technology that we have now that I maybe didn't have 15 years ago. The first 5 years at the company, Dave Smith Instruments, I was the only person in the company. So I was doing everything when the Evolver rack and keyboard products came out. You obviously learn a whole lot. I think if you look at the progression of products, each one is a big improvement in a lot of ways over the others. But the Prophet 12, I tend to still like Polys more. So that was the actual quote, because I've heard other people say it's his favorite synth. I don't know if he really was saying with the whole context of that conversation it's his favorite, but Dave Smith certainly loved this synth, and and he does sort of acknowledge that the VS, the Prophet 12, and the Polyevolver are sort of the pinnacles of his design, aside from, of course, the original Prophet 5. What a beautiful sound, switched on Redux. that's modulating the decimation, which is a pretty wild thing to be able to do, especially for a synth that's this old. What would it be? 12 years old now? Edgestone Studios, this how long have you been playing with this baby? Brand new. I haven't been playing with it for long. Obviously, the synth is not brand new. They don't make it anymore, but... certainly can sound very modern. Trent Reznor also said it was the best synth that he ever made. That's quite high praise. Very beautiful. Top Gun VHS. Fun little split there, silver bass line. Little acid, ping machine. So with this one, you can really hear the use of this high-pass filter. Yes, I just misspoke there. Brand new to me, for sure. Get down on it. So you can hear a lot of these patches are certainly trying to give you the impression that it's a completely analog synth, right? Certainly sounds analog to me. I mean, come on, right? Come on. Go ahead, Dave Smith. More of that tremolo type thing. So, listing up really high, why don't we listen to this? Do you hear that? I don't know if that's aliasing, but it kind of sounds like it. I think you could hear that in there. Can you hear that? What you're listening for is these weird out of tune. I know I'm probably like murdering any cats that might be watching this stream. Arpsy bass. Fascinating. And you know, it's just the sound design is so deep with this compared to something like any of these extremely expensive vintage synths behind me. Expensive synths? Too close to an organ. So you notice that the bass line is using the first row of voices, and then so we have a full 6-voice unison sound for the upper split and the lower split. Most of the synths behind me have 6 voices, so we're really using all 12 here. Wow, very beautiful. Skeptic. That's a good way to check for it. Yes, and of course, it could have just been they were using, to Keith's point, that you could use decimation and hack to introduce some deliberate, low fidelity digital stuff. Don't underestimate a sound like this. That's just a very useful pluck sound. Sound very beautiful, and you need some sounds like that in a track. It can't all be. One of the problems with presets is they often sound really great on their own because that's what they're designed to do, to sort of display what a synth can do. Then you go to try to put it in a track and it's just so overwhelming. It's eating up so much frequency bandwidth. Foaming up. Okay, let's continue. Classic strings. See, this is actually what I think of when I think of Prophet pads, is this sort of, I can hear it coming in the air tonight type, stuff. Sort of that area, but then it does open up into a little bit of almost a hybrid type thing. Play an octave. It reminds me of Derezed, right? Abstract techno. Really cool sounds there. The stereo is flowing. So, Dub, I know you know this synth better than I do. Can we pan individual oscillators left and right, or is most of the stereo-ness coming from the delay section? Just beautiful, isn't it? Complex brass split. Modular philosophy. Osca's spread parameter. Right. Oh, right. So it does the Prophet Rev 2 does this too, right? And the Prophet 08, of course, from around the same era, where if you play a note, it jumps left and right, right? I'm not surprised, Edgetone, that it's there's probably some things you can do in the polyevolver you can't do here, and vice versa. I don't know. I'll definitely be interested to shoot this out against my Prophet 600 right back here, but because I do feel like the character of the Curtis chips is different in this synth. Purity Ring. Think about it, how that you can modulate the high pass filter with that resonance. You can get those really incredible sorts of high pass pads that I've up to this point only really been able to get with the Yamaha CS78 behind me. So this synth too has slop. I was kind of worried this might not quite have a slop function because it is 12 years old at this point. Just the type of sound I love from an analog synth. And the fact that it's, a hybrid synth is completely invisible to me. And again, if we bring the resonance down... and I do think they are panned differently. Yes, the girth knob is important as well. Everybody knows girth is more important than length. Very funny. Trancy ARP. Eternian, how's it going? Having trouble thinking of a legendary synth category that it fails. Yeah. Training day. Yeah, it might be a little complicated for a beginner. I've been thinking about this, to your point. If anybody isn't familiar, we do a lot of live streams that we call the legendary synthesizer test, where we take a classic synth like the Prophet 12 and we run it through a battery of 12 questions devised by myself and the viewers of this channel to determine whether a synthesizer can truly be called legendary. And we break them all up into different categories like iconic, classic, respectable, or even impoverished for a terrible synth, for instance. And we break it down by how many points the synth scores and then what it costs actually in terms of like how expensive or how many what's the price per point is how I should say it. How much money do you get for how much legendary bang for your buck? And of the 12 questions, it's hard to imagine that it would fail anything. Training day test is this a good synth for a beginner? And I realized it is hard for a synth to get all of them right, because it's very hard for a synth to be good for a beginner and then also pass the Deep Space Nine test, which is the test to say, does it have enough modulation possibilities to keep sound designers excited? And in my opinion, we might have passed the monopoly a little bit on either one of those when maybe it shouldn't have, so that's something we might adjust at some point. Really funny sound. Three separate knobs for FM. So we have a single knob, I believe, but we also have amplitude modulation. So there are some ways in which you can see that the Summit really takes after what's going on here. Right, that's the theory, Parbs. I don't know if that's 100% correct, but it does seem like the synth doesn't have as much going above 15K, which I don't mind, because to me, honestly, for instance, the Prophet 600, the Gleegly mod actually introduces, I think it's like a 16K kind of upper limit that it allows the filter to go, because it just sounds so thin if you open the filter up all the way, and by reducing its maximum cutoff, it actually makes it sound more vintage. And so I like that about that. Interesting, there's already some dubstep sounds 12 years ago. Maybe drum and bass, actually. Vital organ? It's a very beautiful organ sound, too. Combination of the high pass filter and also just the low end cut from the filter. Yeah, aliasing isn't always bad. Sometimes it can be kind of beautiful in its own way. There's no doubt in my mind that a Summit could sound incredible. I would be curious to shoot the two of them out, because they do sort of kind of come from the same era. NCOs, which I'm a little skeptical of. I know Yuki the Synth Dragon has a lot of opinions about NCOs. I do have a Modulus 002 or Modal 002, which is definitely the direct competitor to this synth from the era. I think it came out the year after, and it too is a hybrid 12-voice synth, but it might have been the first synth to use NCOs, or these FPGA-based oscillators. I'm not sure if the peak had come out before or after at that point. The Summit is really fat. Those NCOs are tuned very darkly in a nice vintagey sort of way. There is a little cluttered, muddy sort of thing to the oscillators, which I think this synthesizer overcomes with all of its beautifulness, but I can kind of hear in there a little bit of a hint of that JP8000 sludge that I'm not the hugest fan of. Uncertain patches, like the patches that don't use the filter as much, I should say. This is also, by the way, before anybody absolutely roasts me alive in the comments, like I said, I'm just experiencing this really for the first time with you guys live. So in that way, I'm saying a thing that I think I'm hearing, but I could be wrong. So just don't eat me alive. Almost like an Andromeda, right? Has it going to dab manipulate? Very beautiful. Doctor Who split. What is it? Something like that. Definitely a little hint of that Waldorf Q sort of territory. I think for me, though, just the possibilities with the distortion make it probably a hint for a future stream. Is this the best synth for industrial music? I mean, I think just the capacity for this thing for distortion and mangling, and the tune feedback, I cannot think of a synth that is so fully featured in the degradation category. I read the full quote earlier in the stream of Dab Manipulate. He sort of says it's his favorite. I don't know. He mentions the VS, the Prophet 12, and the Polyevolver as probably being like highlights of his career post Prophet 5. And I think that that's a fair place to put it at. Did you know that was the next patch? No. Spinner take off sound from Blade Runner, Copper Pot. Yeah, Roy, I mean, it's just one quote from the man. I appreciate your ability to recognize that it might be the Mandela effect. A little bit of THX action. Talk about a fucking sound. A6 is another one of those synths from this era I'd love to get my hands on. The A6 to me can sound a lot like a virus for an analog synth. And I'm getting some patches give me that in a way that I don't love, where it's like, it's giving me a little virtual analog. And then there's there's obviously patches that rank among some of the most gorgeous sounds ever heard from a synthesizer. There are many synths, including VS's and technically even a Roland X8P. There will be a point where the synth is missing a part and they just won't be repairable. But hopefully it's a long time from now. Roy asks, is this the best value? They hover around $2,000 or so. See what I mean about almost taking it into that territory? How much can you get a Morpho 4X for? Hey, how's it going, Gingy? Great little sounds. Hoover. Oh my God, that's a great emulation there, isn't it? $750 is very good. Sean Johnson, how's it going? Polymod. I mean, one thing I can say about these patches is if you go back to the live stream where we checked out the Waldorf Blofeld, it's like, okay, I get it. That's why digital synths are so powerful, is they can have extremely complex mod matrices that basically aren't possible on analog synths except for that one. And it's like you could create these sound effect type things that, to the Oberheim OBXA you're never going to do. But here we have it, and a lot of it is analog. It's just the oscillator section, that starting point is digital. And I believe the delays are digital as well. I'm glad Mr. Ice Planet 9000 himself showed up for this particular sound, as it could be the basis of a whole Ice Planet song. Yeah, the Rev 2 is another really famous one. Dubstation scored a Prophet 12 on a great deal with the intent to flip it, but instead it got the best keyboard spot in the studio. I get it. And a lot of people hate the keybed. I love the keybed on this thing. Parbs, I don't think so. I haven't... Beautiful. It doesn't seem to be a natural fit. I love showcasing, for instance, later up this month, we have a really awesome new emulation of a classic British vintage synthesizer coming out that we'll be checking out on this channel in software form, a VST. I love checking out that type of thing. Serum 2, I mean, is the Taylor Swift of the synth world. It doesn't need any exposure from me, that's for sure. What a sound. So many of these patches. Yeah, what's Serum? That's the right answer. So this is like what I'm talking about, where it's like almost JP8000 adjacent. Not necessarily the worst, but it's one of those things. Serum 2 has almost endless options. I love Spectrasonic's Omnisphere, almost endless options, but there's some magic to Omnisphere, and it's not just Eric Persing, who created some of the greatest patches of all time, but I do think when he went to make that instrument, he was very inspired to make sure he took his synth design experience to that instrument. So everything in Omnisphere is simple but powerful, and a lot of the sounds and effects do not sound neutral and digital. In fact, there's been, since it first came out in 2008, many different filter types that are more analog sounding, more Moog-y, more courtesy, and effects like emulations of the Roland RE501 Space Echo or Chorus Echo that have that like wonderful, that's always been in Omnisphere, and that philosophy has always been there. So for me, that's a synth I haven't featured on this channel in a while, but that's just because Omnisphere 3 is not out yet. So James, that's awesome. That's a great compliment. That's what I want this channel to be, which is a place where people find inspiration. And for me, it's not always that I want people to get gear acquisition syndrome and just covet all of these expensive synthesizers, but instead to hear a sound and then feel like, you know what? That's like a whole song right there, and I could make it with the synth I have, because you probably can. That's the great thing about synths, is a lot of sawtooths and square waves, you know, like, and a filter, a low pass filter. You could get a lot done with just that, and some delays and effects. You know, there's nothing here, so very fun. Why don't we actually create our own sound? So this is a initialized patch. All right, so let's turn the release down and let's zoom in and see what we're seeing here on the oscilloscope. We have a pretty bright sawtooth, but it's got a curve, right? So it's not a perfect sawtooth. Like comparing this with the SH2 from last week, that was a pretty straight sawtooth wave. Here we have more of a curved one, a little fatter sounding with a little jagged shark tooth at the top. Going down, it gets pretty wonky. But to my ear, still very sawtooth. Okay, so we have a shape control over this. So we changed the mod, but we also have yeah, Todd Phipps, it could be YouTube compression you're hearing on a live stream. Actually, when you go back and watch, YouTube will have usually a little bit better sound quality, but some of it is just the fact that YouTube does not receive PCM audio as an option in a live stream. It has to be compressed, and then it's double compressed when it goes out to you. So the weird thing about MP3 compression is that it handles full songs really well, relatively speaking. But something as pure as an oscillator, it actually often has trouble with. And you'll hear that as noise at the top end of the frequency spectrum. And there's just nothing I could really do about that, unfortunately. So let's see here. So, yeah, someone else said that Trent was a fan. I didn't know that, actually. Let's check out the square wave. That's pretty close to an analog square wave. When we were looking at the SH2 last week, it looked pretty similar. Very good pulse width modulation there. You can go from triangle to sine. And that sine wave is very good. Look at how precise that is. Look at how much more precise it is than the analog synth. Tines. So this is like your perfect DX7 Rhodes type patch. Starting point. You would have a patch like this on like a DW8000 or a waveform like this to be able to create those sounds. That would be so awesome if YouTube would allow you to use FLAC incoming on a live stream. You might still hear some issues during the live stream, but when you played the video back, it would be fine. So that's kind of frustrating. Mellow. Kind of more sine wavy. Church. Kind of an organ shape. Muted. This reminds me of the saxophone shape from the DW8000. Like you get that woodwindy, reedy type sound. Probably could be used for vocals too. Oh, shape can be used to blend the initial oscillator shape. Yeah, so that's a thing, I guess, once you get further in here. So it's called nasal. So it's definitely not as deep as something like the Summit or any modern wavetable synth that's going to give you a lot of control. But we do have something in here for a lot of those sounds. But honestly, it does remind me of the DW8000 quite a bit. So this almost sounds like a thin saw. I will say that the wavetable sound really good and the interpolation is awesome. This one's called Gothic, but which I'm upset about because it's an organ. We do have a vocally one. Kind of goes from like or e, to to like a thinner type sound. Shrill. Yeah, I should say it's not a real saxophone wave, but there is a sax wave on the DWA 8000 that sounds like that. Could you do dubstep with that area? Run that through some distortion, you probably could. Let's see here. Really great digital type stuff here. Meh. We have red noise, which I guess is like pink noise, white noise, and then violet noise, which is actually weighted so the highest frequencies are even brighter, which is kind of crazy to me. Very cool. So why don't we try to make a sound with just a sawtooth wave at first, and then we have this like four-way selector here. So if I go over here, I have another sawtooth wave, but the output level's down. So I need to increase that to about 100. And now we're listening to two oscillators at once. And I can increase the oscillator slop with the oscillator slop all the way down. It still moves. It's not perfect, which is great. Oh, so you get three different waveforms to populate the shape parameter. See the little boxes on their main oscillate selection and select other shapes. All right, so let me just do that real quick. We'll turn that oscillator off and go back, and we'll pick another one of the interesting ones. And then where is the... Oh, I see. So wave left could be something else. Wow, and wave right could be something else. Oh, so that's interesting. It's actually not... So is it always... And then if I change the shape... Oh, it doesn't change wave left and wave right. So you kind of have three different things to blend between at any moment. Super cool. Is it poly aftertouch? No, I believe it's channel aftertouch. I don't believe it responds to poly aftertouch either, but one of you gods out there of the Prophet 12 could correct me if I'm wrong. And then, yeah, on the analog stuff, you can't blend. Instead of being able to blend between wave shapes, you just get the pulse width modulation or whatever it is. So going back to sawtooth, let's just keep it real simple. Two sawtooths. We'll increase slop to 25% on both. Something like that. One of my favorite things about modern synths as compared to vintage synths with voltage-controlled oscillators is that voltage-controlled oscillators are always going to have the same amount of slop, whereas on a synth like this, even at 25%, it's sloppier than any of my vintage synths. And depending on which note you play, sometimes you get the oscillators closer in tuning, and sometimes further away. See, that one was tighter and then looser. So let's bring the slop down to just like maybe 10 on both of them and see how that sounds. Because I still want to detune. As if it was a vintage synth. I'd probably detune by about 20 cents. So let's see how this sounds. Wow, it's very detuned. So very little slop to make it sound vintage. Okay, bring down the output level to about 70. We'll dial back some of that distortion we're hearing. So we'll go ahead and do that. Yeah, just a little bit of slop goes a long way. I think over slopping your oscillators can be a kind of a recipe to sounding like an amateur. Although I do like the sound. Like I said, sometimes it's nice that you get more variation than you actually would with a vintage synth. Vintage synths are weirdly predictable in their unpredictability. And it never takes on that digital character too much. It is losing that high end though, right? Which I don't mind. Oh, you've swapped to Sherry. That's important. Hey, let's get some scum cheers in the chat. Thank you very much for the reminder, Carl, and thank you guys for hanging out with me tonight. This is so much fun. Let's get to the good part, the filter. So, added some release. Just a little bit of attack to sharp, take off the front end. Let's bring the cutoff filter down, the cutoff down. Increase the envelope amount to about 50, and we'll just add some decay and a little bit of release too. More decay. With something like Serum, you definitely need to add some chaos in there to give it a little bit of movement, because otherwise it is going to sound pretty static, which is good for like dubstep-y bass type stuff, but not anything you want to have sound vintage or analog. So let's experiment with resonance. So first let's put it in two-pole mode. A lot more fizz because it's not cutting off the frequencies as much. Two-pole mode on this is interesting. Well, it does kind of take on like a little bit of a bowed string sound here, doesn't it? But even if I crank the resonance, that's max resonance. It does take on a little bit of that meowing character you get from a Moog ladder filter. Meow, 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 meow. Resonance out. Nice and snappy. In fact, if we bring the sustain and the decay down a bit, you kind of get that tangerine dreamy type thing. Overall volume boost in here, or do I just need to boost the oscillators into the... Yeah, envelopes feel very snappy. As we increase pan spread, yes, so Spiritual Anarchist, this is definitely, you know, any 12 voice synth, you kind of lean into that that LA sound, especially because you do have those more digital sounding oscillators. Okay, so here's where it gets crazy. So we have a sub oscillator on every oscillator. Or oscillator 1 sub oscillator. So why don't we take oscillator 1 down an octave? Let's turn oscillator 2 on and bring it up an octave. Oscillator 3, I mean. And now we're listening to like a 4 octave. Just add a little slop and a little detune to that. Yeah, only oscillator 1. Really does not need any fine tune on that. It's already the slops enough. Change it to a pulse wave. Sine wave is nice, right? There's a lot of movement in that sound without using a single fucking LFO, right? Just think about that for a second. Okay, as we bring the resonance down, the cutoff down, let's put it into 4-pole mode. Some key tracking. Too much key tracking, just a little is nice. Analog Rich, have a good night. Nice little sort of bowed string sound. Let's add resonance. So way more of a resonance characteristic. Very dominating, actually. You know, if you're trying to create sort of a overhyped, brassy type thing, right? You don't need much. 30 resonance. The way that we have all those oscillators stacked is giving almost like a what would I call that? Like a reggae drum type sound. So I've reinitialized again. I want to just kind of go back to a let's go to the pulse width here, or the pulse wave, and then let's modulate. So assign mod source. We can just go to the first one. Let's see here. Aftertouch is routed to drive. Let's route aftertouch to the cutoff and add some to that. I love aftertouch to cutoff. Mod source 4, and I can just assign a mod source and hold LFO 1, and then assign a destination and go to pulse width, and then the amount we can set here. it's nice we can't go all the way into through 0. Or maybe we can. So just one oscillator can sound really great. Let's do the same thing. Let's make oscillator 2 a pulse wave. Add a little slop to both of them. Just a little bit. Just a little slop. Bring up the output level. And then assign mod source LFO. Let's go to slot 6. Assign mod source LFO. And then assign mod destination. And again, shape. And this is, we'll do about the same amount. 69 just happened to be the number I picked, so. Oh, you're right. So Keith, why don't we, for the fuck of it, why don't we change the wave back to a sawtooth wave on both of those, so we can hear the pulse width modulation on the saw. What's interesting is, like, this is the phase where the synth to me sort of sounds like a Waldorf. Just in the oscillator section, it doesn't get me all the way there in terms of sounding like a vintage synth. But that's not bad. Let's take it. Now we're going to... Make sure my output levels aren't too hot. Down to 70 for both of these guys. Sounds good? Sounds good, but you do hear that truncation of the high end, for sure. Low pass filter. 4-pole, add some resonance. Let's make sure we have some release on this. Things about this synth is the throw of the aftertouch. So watch this as I go down. You'll hear some. You'll hear the aftertouch engage, and you can watch how the key has like an additional room for the key to go after you've pressed it down. Let's just go assign that aftertouch. It's a wonderful thing. But it is funny to me that the character of the resonance is a little, I don't know how to describe it. Let's go in a different direction now. Let's try to do, how do we put it into a unison mode? I know that's around here somewhere. It's not in global. Assign, no, arpeggiator. Unison, there we go. One voice, all voices. Hear how we get that little whine in there? Just Melda. Melda's M oscilloscope. Why am I not getting any unison yet? Here we go. There we are. That'll do it. All right, the aftertouch amount is kind of crazy there, so we can turn that back down. Wow. Let's bring that down. So we're trying to do sort of a little bit of a Tom Sawyer-y type thing. Just turn the aftertouch all the way off on this for now. Back to the unison menu. Let's turn the detune way down. OBS is what I'm using, so. Using the pan spread and is just brutal. It actually does it better than you'd think. All right, let's go to assign mod source. Let's go to... Do we have a random? Yeah, we do have random. And then let's set that to the LFO cutoff and just add a little randomness. Randomness is what you need to get that convincing OBX sound, because that synthesizer was not going to behave nicely. That just convinced me of the synth, because for a bit I was like, I don't know if I love the resonance character. It's a little I don't know. It's one of those things, like, it's so funny what we love or dislike when it comes to sounds, and it's very subjective. I think many people, much with better ears than me, love the sound of Mini Moogs and Prophet 5s. But what I will say is, I like the sound of a lot of synths that don't have that heritage, that don't lose as much low end. This synth certainly loses low end, but here with that randomness on the cutoff, getting that spread in there that's just incredible. We could even make this a little closer by picking random again. Let's see here, random. Where is she? Random. And then we're going to set this to, can I set it to assign mod destination decay? Yeah, we can. And then we'll just add a little bit of randomness to that as well. And that should give us, this is something you definitely hear on like the CS70M, a discrete synth where there's trim pots for all of this stuff here. The resonance is about just under 50% right now. Ingolf, welcome. It's interesting because it actually shortened it because but maybe negative 50. past 50% in 4-pole mode, we start to get that different sort of Curtis characteristic. Here's how this sounds. I will say it does sound pretty good, Synthsonic. To almost 9 o'clock. And I should say, the filters are so smooth on this. And unlike a Prophet 6 that steps as you move the frequency knob, you don't get that on this synth, which is wonderful. I think that's a very silly thing that weirdly does impact you more than you'd think. It's just like enjoyable to do a filter sweep. All the pots and knobs feel premium. They are smaller than I would have thought. The synth overall is smaller than I would have thought. Comparing it to something like the Prophet 600 behind me, the knobs are quite a bit smaller, but man, does it sound good. At 100 out of 128 or so. It just gets so crazy. I mean, like, there's no vintage. Well, I shouldn't say there's no vintage synth that goes that crazy, but you've heard me shoot out most of these synths behind me, and they don't really go to that territory. Even the ones that go to self-oscillation, they really just barely touch self-oscillation most of the time, except for the AX60. But right around 70, 78 right now. Let's take it further. We're going to assign a mod source, and so we'll go to mod slot and we'll go to oscillator 1, and in this case assign modulation destination, and we'll go to filter cutoff. So what we've just created is a filter FM routing like we might have on an AX60, and so let's just crank that up. Kind of takes this a little bit closer to that that Tom Sawyer sound. I've always wondered if there's a little bit of hidden filter FM in the Overheim filter, because it does have that sort of chirpy, sort of FM-y character. Tighten up the random stuff a little bit and just use the filter FM to really take us into craziness. I think the slop is actually creating those weird... It's not the slop, it's just something to do with the way that interacts in there. Very interesting, yeah. Real small amounts go a long way. octave. We could even turn this oscillator on. Output level about the same. Interestingly, it seems like it's dodging the filter. Straight out, you know what I mean? Like, how could that be? Oscillator tuning? Oscillator mods? I don't know. It seems to be back in. Use any distortion yet at all. You don't need it. It's already so beefy. Let's decimate. We could add air to the oscillators. That is fucking pissin' razor blades. I don't think it needs that, although you could use a little bit to compensate for those frequencies that are missing a bit. Girth. That's just ridiculous. But a little on bass sounds might be nice. Just adding, you know, some filters in here. So we could go left and right with these guys. I mean, it's this one sound right here is one of the most satisfying. I mean, next to having an Oberheim OBX, or just an OBX in the studio, the fucking monstrosity of this thing. I could listen to that sound. I mean, just wild, right? It's one of the best sounding synths I think I've ever heard, for sure. I don't know what all went into it, but they just did something crazy with it. Wow. I get it now. I get it. I was skeptical of that filter. And, you know, I think the oscillator section in 2025 is not as good as some of the modern stuff. I mean, that shouldn't be surprising that something like a Novation Summit or Super Gemini is going to sound a little bit here. I don't know. I'd have to shoot them out back to back. I'm just going off of my impression of it. But I would make a guess that those synths oscillator section kind of can take you in a very clean way, but just a very, like a high fidelity sort of way. There's a way in which these oscillators are showing their age a little, which is okay. But I will say there is an uncanny valley when it comes to digital synths, in my opinion. You know, one of the best sounding synths of all time is the Roland D50. The first virtual analog synth, maybe, if you define it as a virtual analog. I don't, because I think you have to have the knobs on it to really be virtual analog. But it was Roland's certainly first attempt at that type of thing. And it just sounds fucking beautiful. I don't know how they nailed it on the first attempt. And then, you know, 90s synths get into the virtual analog thing for real with the Nords and the viruses and all of that, JP 8000s, and they're just not, to me, the kind of character that inspires me. I know for a lot of people love those sounds, love those early trance records, and I love them too. But in the context of like a modern musician working with instruments, like what's inspiring and beautiful just inherently, you know, I think these oscillators do sort of harken back into that realm a bit, for better or worse. Not, you know, I think the interpolation between the different shapes is really good. I think the limited number of shapes and the way that it sort of clamps down to get rid of some aliasing. It's nice that the aliasing's not there. I mean, I think the aliasing could drive me crazy if it was on really audible on this synth. Yeah, I think the Summit is a really thing. I think, hey, Crystal Classic Vision, welcome. Just coming to the end of the stream here. Peak is great. Summit's great. Norlead 4 promo video. And then, of course, something like Super Gemini. Am I missing any other major hybrids right now? Groove Synthesis Third Wave and Waldorf's Microwave, that's a completely different thing. But a Quantum, those types of synths are going to have just a higher fidelity sort of sound to them, and that's okay. It's kind of funny because I bet at the time these oscillators sounded to everybody like, oh, that's as good as it gets, right? But does the effects include tape echo? If so, modulate with an LFO. Yeah, so if I can actually do that real quick. We'll just turn the second delay and the third delay all the way off. So we only have one delay on right now. And we'll make the time kind of slow. That way you can hear what it's doing. And feedback. And then let's assign a mod source. So we'll use LFO2. Does that work? Okay. And then assign mod destination. I love this sequential thing of you can just press the assign modulation and then it takes you there to delay one time. It works. And so we can add a little bit to do the Ice Planet 9000 trick of adding some warble, some modulation to the pitch of the delay. Even just the first amount. Let's slow that frequency way down. Going back over here, add just a little more. even at 5, it's like you got to be real careful with it on this synth. But it doesn't sound bad with very small values. 4? Around 4 sounds very tape echo-y. So yeah, I think that's a good place to call it for the evening. What a fun stream. We're going to be doing more on the Prophet 12 for sure. This is just the beginning. I'm sure we'll run it through the Legendary Synthesizer test. I'm sure I'll sample it for the Legendary Synthesizer sample pack. But overall, very impressed. Not even close to scratching the surface. That was only a quarter of the presets that it shipped with, as well as just the most basic exploration into my first time with the synth. We really even fuck with the high pass filter, the tuned feedback, arpeggiator, scratch the surface with modulation. I mean, it's kind of the thing that I both love and hate about synth tubing is I get to experience a bunch of synths because I'm, an addict and just fucking buying synths crazy and whatever. But I do wish I had more time with each one of them. This synth definitely feels like one of those. Prophet Rev 2, of course, in the same category, where it begs to have a lot of time spent with it. Because I think that's where you'll get a lot. There's so much here. So much here. That to be able to experience it all in even a 2-hour stream is not enough. It's just not enough. And I know some people wish my streams were shorter. I put out shorter videos. I do too. I'm sorry. I plan on one day being better at that. But for the time being, I just think, it's got to be up there with the best digital oscillator and analog filter combinations yet. I'm not sure. I don't think you can go wrong with it either. Aquatic. No worries. The significant other is significantly important. Synths comes second for sure. I appreciate it, Jeffrey. Jack, I appreciate it. People love the Prophet sound. And I'll be honest, I'm not... The Prophet sound... This synth is special. I really want to, one day, I hope, fingers crossed, the Prophet VS I was buying from Canada deal fell through because of the tariffs. I hope one day to be able to compare this with a VS because they do seem to be the two that interest me the most. But honestly, there wouldn't really be a comparison in terms of how you interact with the synths. I mean, this just having all of the knobs and easy modulation setup and everything that the modern DSI and sequential synths really set the standard for the whole synth world to have these great interfaces. There's no vintage synths like this. Aside from something like a Prophet 5, that's a very, very simple synth. They've come up with ways. Now all synths kind of do this thing where you have you can assign the modulation matrix just by twiddling knobs and stuff. I love a modulating tape echo delay time. Yeah, so slow LFO, little bit of modulation in there helps make it a chorus in and of itself. You don't need a chorus pedal necessarily, especially since you could certainly do it with just a couple of the delay lines. You have 4 of them, DW8000 has 2. And it's pretty effective at doing chorus or delay. And here I'm just like, you've got 4, so you could do a chorus and delay. The thickness you can get out of just one oscillator with some pulse width modulation, even if it's a sawtooth or something else, is crazy as well. And we didn't get into FM or AM. We didn't, there's too much. There's too much in the synth. We'll have to come back. But for tonight, this is a good place to call it. So thank you guys for being my friends. Thank you for being here. I know I say it, but you guys changed my life. You know, it's a different world for me now than before I had this channel. And for everybody who's become part of this community, thank you for being part of my family. And I'm very excited that somebody out there experiences this stream and they go, wow, that was a good use of my time to hang out and learn a little bit about synths and hear some cool sounds. I hope I've been able to accomplish that. So that's the goal. I know I don't always hit it. Sometimes we've had better and worse streams, but I do think the Prophet 12 might be the best synth for industrial. So that might be the way we go next time the synth is back on the stream. Continue to be excellent, guys, and I will see you next week.